So you spent 13 months in jail. At the end of the 13 months, what did you get sentenced to, and how did your friends and family react to your sentence?
Yeah, so I spent 13 months in jail, and a lot of people don't know this, but jail is far worse than prison. In prison, there's liberty. There's a lot of things that you can do in prison. So, for example, when I went to prison, I had a dog, so I trained service dogs. Yeah. There was a program called the American Vet Dogs Foundation, and they partnered with prison system to train service dogs. So, for example, George Bush Sr., he had a dog that died. He was by the casket that was Sully. Sully came from us. So we trained service dogs. So there's that. The compound was huge. There's several different sports teams you can be a part of. There's organizations, there's book clubs, there's tournaments. So it's like a private all-male university. So prison, there's a lot more liberty. In county jail, you can't do anything at all. So it was absolutely horrible. So when I was in county jail and I got sentenced to those 13 years, I was just so tired of being there in county jail. And I'm like, let's go. I'm ready to go right now. Where's the judge? Let them know to send me right now. And I'm not waiting a day more. So I was really anxious and ready to go to prison. It's crazy that may sound.
No, it makes a lot of sense because I've done a lot of reading where people say that jail is just supposed to be a temporary holding place, whereas prison is actually built for people to live. I mean, there's people who spend their entire lives there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
but in 13 months, it's not really, that's not a short-term stay.
Exactly. So 13 years, you hear 13 years from the judge. How did your mother act? How did your father act? Like, how are people reacting in the courtroom when they hear that?
Yeah, so in the courtroom, I had a few family members with me. Of course, they were devastated. They were distraught by the whole sentence. And of course, the family of the victims was there as well. I'm not sure if they felt like justice has been served, but that's one regret that I do have. It's just knowing that I caused that trauma. I gave some of that experience. That's something that I definitely think about often, and I regret. But yeah, 13 years when I received a sentence, part of me says, yes, let's go. Time is only gonna work itself down. And another part is like, man, what have I got myself into?
You mentioned that your only regret is in regards to the victims and their families. Were you able to give some sort of victim impact statement or show any sort of remorse?
Yes, I was able to give an impact statement, but I felt like it was forced. Just taking the advice, taking the counsel of my lawyer at that time. If I were to do it again, if I were to see the victims now, I would truly tell them how I feel about the situation and how I feel about the pain that I caused them. So.
Right. At any point during this 13 months, even during the arrest process, do you feel that you were discriminated against, or do you feel like you actually got like the proper treatment that you deserved?
So I don't know much about the criminal justice system as far as sentencing. Yes, I am aware that there are racial discrimination. I can only speak for myself. Yes, I did experience discrimination when I was there, but what can I do about it now?
Right, that's absolutely true. I mean, all you can do is move forward.
Yeah.
So trial is over, done with county jail, finally in prison. What type of people did you meet in prison, and did you meet people from similar racial or cultural backgrounds as you?
So a few people that I met in county jail kind of prepared me for the people who I would meet in prison. As I said before, people from prison were transitioning back to county jail before they go home. So I'm seeing guys with, it's kind of true what you see, tattoos all over the face, tattoos all over the head. Yeah, when you first see it, it's shocking. Like, man, how can someone present themselves like that? But after a while spending time there, it's normal. It's so crazy because after spending some time there and you see someone without any tattoos, you start looking at them like they're the outcast and they're the weird one. But believe it or not, I met some really solid men in prison, one of which shaped me to the person that I am now.
How did he shape you? Like, what was the effect that he had on you?
Okay, so a lot of people that I looked up to in prison, A lot of people that I really clicked with, that I had good, strong, healthy relationship with, were people who were incarcerated for life. They received life sentence for either murder or just something that society deems heinous. Those are the people that I just gravitated to. We just connected. I don't know why. It just happened. But one of these men, I like how he moved. So we're in a society where we're in a system where it's just doom and gloom every single day. Like you see it on people's countenance as people are walking. There's no smile. There's no hope. There's fear. It's just down. There's no hope at all. But amongst all these people, there are like a very few people. For some reason, they happen to be lifers. Lifers are the term that we used to refer to people who spending life in prison. So there are these lifers who had hope. They're the ones who are starting programs. They're the ones who are mentoring young guys. They're the ones that are speaking on behalf of the prison population so that we can have change. And one of these guys, he was one of them. And I was just so fortunate enough that he was my partner in the dog program. I trained him. And I just watched how he moved. I watched how he carried himself.
Right.
I watched how he spoke to the other guards. I watched how he spoke to the other inmates, although I don't like referring to other people as inmates.
Right.
I like how he dressed, and I clung to him. I gravitated towards him. And because of that one person, I am the person that I am now. So I thank God for that too.
I hate to deviate, but I did notice you mentioned the way that he dressed. Now, I'm sure a lot of other people have this misconception that everyone has to dress the same in prison, but based off of you saying the way he dressed, does that mean that you had some freedom to choose what you could wear?
Not necessarily. Everything is structured. So by the way he dressed, I'm not just simply speaking of what he has on, but it's how he's wearing it.
Okay.
So we're all issued the same. So a weird thing for me to get used to upon my release was color.
Right.
I had to get used to color. When I was in prison, I would watch TV and I would see people wearing color, purple, red, green. And I'm saying to myself, how can they wear that? That's too bright.
So you
because
weren't orange.
the only color we had, orange is more so for county jail. You know, like the orange jumpsuit.
Right.
In prison, there's really no jumpsuit unless you're going, there's really no jumpsuit. But the only colors that we had was white, gray, blue. And for certain people who held preferred jobs, they had khaki.
Right.
So it wasn't what he was wearing, it was how he wore it. His shirt was always pressed. He had access to an iron. Don't ask me how. His shirt was always pressed. He always had on a belt. It was tucked in. He was on time to everywhere he had to go. He's always waiting at the gate, just early, ready to go. And that really, really attracted me a lot.
If I may ask, was he incarcerated at a young age?
Yeah, he was locked up since he was 22. And right now he's 42 years old. Spoke to him a couple days ago.
Wow. So based off of what you told me about him, and I guess my own personal takeaway, because he got locked up so young, he had the opportunity to grow and mature as a person and mold himself into the person he wanted to be. And instead of him just giving up, he was like, let me help to mentor and be there for other people who still have a chance to get out and make something of themselves. Would that be a fair assumption?
It is, but it's really hard to... We're always growing. We're never remaining stagnant. So it's really hard to grow in there positively because you're in this environment that is the exact same thing that you're doing out on the streets. So you're robbing people on the streets, people are still getting robbed in prison.
Right.
You're smoking on the streets, you're still smoking in prison. You're drinking on the streets, you're still drinking in prison. You're having sex on the street, and you know what I'm saying. But it's really, 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 you have to force yourself. You really have to sit down and do a deep, deep introspection and ask yourself, what do you want to be?
Right.
Have that image in your mind and then just fight for it, because in that environment, it is hard to do so.
Was it hard for you to adapt and to ignore all the other distractions and everything happening around you?
I wouldn't say it was hard. It was more so challenging. It was challenging. What was helpful was I knew that I wasn't going to be there for the rest of my life, so I had hope. Second, I live vicariously through other people. So as I'm watching TV, I'm seeing people become successful. I'm seeing people who are business owners. I'm seeing people starting this. And I'm just asking myself, why not me? Even in prison, I'm surrounded by CEOs of companies. I'm surrounded by people from different cultures and backgrounds, and I'm just hearing their story. I'm saying to myself, why not me? I can do the exact same thing. So because of that, I had hope that I can be something even after my release. I just started to live accordingly. I just started to plan accordingly, even in there. So to answer your question, was it hard? No. Was it challenging? Yes. But it's definitely doable.
So were you able to take advantage of any opportunities that were in prison so that you could work towards being that person you wanted to be during, your preparation for release and eventually getting out?
Yeah. I took advantage of every opportunity. Well, not everyone, because everyone wasn't really applicable to me. But I was a teacher's aide. I helped people become computer literate.
Right.
I was a teacher's aide to another teacher who taught GED, so I'm helping students get their GED as well. As I mentioned before, I was a part of the American Vet Dogs Foundation, so I took advantage of that also. And even got to a point where I wanted to start a book club called Birds of a Feather, and I wanted to run it by the warden and some other staff members at the prison. But the pandemic hit, and I wasn't able to do so.
Wow, that's a lot. I think that's really good to hear that somebody experienced prison and took a lot of opportunities. Because I think a lot of people don't quite understand or even know what opportunities, are in prison. I think people just assume like, oh, people are in prison and they're there, like you said, having sex, doing drugs, and, just, sleep, wake up, whatever. But to hear that, there's opportunities there for people and that somebody can actually take advantage of them is actually really positive.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit and hear more about the relationships you had outside of prison. So during your time incarcerated, did any of your relationships change with your friends, your families, or even the people that you ran with before you got locked up?
Yeah, good question. So as I got into my time in prison, I really started to call people less. Yes, I still called my family, but I just really started to call other people less because I actually just started to change. Myself and this person no longer have anything in common. And it's evident because as we're speaking, I used to curse, I used to use profanity a lot. And as we're speaking, I don't curse anymore. So as this person is using profanity, it's really cringy to my ear. And just hearing how they're moving, hearing what they're saying, hearing what their plans are, I can no longer associate. So my communication with the outside world just pretty much came to a standstill.
Right. And what about faith? Do you feel, because people always talk about how in prison, I found Jesus, I found Allah, I want to become an imam. Do you feel like faith that you grew up with helped you to change and, grow into a different person?
It was in prison. And the solitude of prison, that was the reason why I was able to grow my relationship with God. And God is the only reason why I was able to make it out of there. I've had a few encounters where I could have been in fights, I could have got stabbed, and thank God it didn't happen.